So the first thing to know about this recipe, as is the case with many in Dere Coquinaria, is it is incomplete. It's really, you can't follow it step by step the way that it's written. You need to know that this duck, or flamingo, is probably parboiled and then finished off in an oven. And it'll make a lot more sense trying to recreate the recipe if we do that. So start by filling a pot with water and then add the salt, white vinegar, and a bunch of dill. And once the pot is boiling, then set the duck in and parboil for 15 minutes. Then take it off the heat and carefully transfer the duck to a baking dish, breast side up.
It always amazes me to think how ancient people came up with stuff. Like, it's obviously a trial and error and then accumulated experience and knowledge from generation to generation, passed down, written down, and all that. But it still fascinates me that someone had an idea and is like, hey, what happens if I do this? And with some of the stuff that they figured out, I'm like, how did you even have the courage to try that? But some did. I mean, think about it. Even the early hunter-gatherers had to really learn which mushrooms you can eat, which fruits you can eat. And this is all before internet, before medicine, before biology, before machines, everything. It's like passed down generationally. But then again, on the other hand, we have access to a lot of information on the go, but we don't learn this stuff, which means when we need it, sure, we can find it. But if we are in a situation where we would need it and we don't know it and we don't have access to the internet, we die. A hunter-gatherer who had generational knowledge that he learned and they learned throughout their life, what plants to eat, what foods to eat, how to cook them and all that kind of stuff, and how to build traps and how to hunt prey. Oh yeah, you put me and a hunter-gatherer in a forest if you can travel in time and get one of those. Yeah, I know how to use a computer, but I don't know how to build one. Likewise, I know how to Google stuff, but there is a lot of stuff that I don't know, that ancient people would have absolutely known.
Then chop up the whites of your leeks and stuff the cilantro and the chopped leek inside of the bird. We won't be eating these, they're just there for flavor.
Okay.
Once it's stuffed, you can truss up the back legs of the bird and then slice the breast in a crosshatch pattern and poke holes into any of the fatty parts of the duck.
So it doesn't
This is going to allow the fat to render through and create a crispy skin as it cooks. Then set the duck in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 175 Celsius, and roast it for 30 minutes, and then take it out and baste it with that defrutum. Ooh. This will not only give it a sweetened flavor, but also color it just as the original recipe says. Then return it to the oven and continue to roast it for 30 to 45 minutes or until it gets to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Then remove the cooked duck from the oven.
Hey, looking good already, looking good, look at that.
And then let it cool a bit while you prepare the sauce. For this, you want to mince the mint and rue as finely as possible, and then in a mortar and pestle, grind up the pepper and the cumin and the coriander, and then in a clean mortar, grind up the chopped dates into a fine paste. Then add in the minced herbs and the spices, and finally the asafoetida, and grind everything together until it's well incorporated and as smooth as you can get it. Then add in the white wine vinegar and continue. Then this all goes into a small saucepan along with the drippings from the duck. Then set this over medium heat and let it simmer for about 5 minutes. Then
let it simmer.
The recipe says to thicken it with some starch if you need it, because I found that my duck just didn't give off enough drippings to make it, so I needed to thicken it up very much. Maybe if I had that flamingo or possibly a large parrot, I would have had enough, but my duck...
Yeah, flamingo number one. So here's the thing. When he was talking about morsa and pestle, you know what I was thinking? I don't know if it's just me, so let me know, guys. Let me know. But it's like when you buy, let's say you buy a pesto, right? Then you buy it from the little jar, you open it, take it, put it on the pasta, eat it, and it's good, great. But when you make it, when you actually make it from scratch, whatever it is, it tastes better. Now, it could be because your ingredients are fresher rather than something that has been mass-produced or maybe higher quality. But do you think there is also some form of psychological reason why something that you make yourself ends up tasting better to you? Do you think there is some psychology to it? Because it happens to me every time. I make pasta sauce from scratch like 10 times out of 10. I don't buy it. I just make it. And the few times that I tried actually making the pasta too from scratch, I always end up liking it more.
But even though I couldn't find a flamingo, I think that this dish is going to be a real showstopper, a must-have item for any ancient Roman dinner that you're going to host. Speaking of hosting, just a reminder that I'm going to be hosting a river cruise down the Nile next February 2026. Really? So if you want to sign up for that, link is in the description. Cool. As for hosting an ancient Roman dinner, here are a few more pointers to make sure your evening goes off without a hitch. So you want to throw an ancient Roman dinner party?
Yes.
Well, first things first. How big do you want this shindig to be? Because there are really two ends of the spectrum. Like the Emperor Claudius gave frequent and grand dinner parties as a rule in spacious places, where 600 guests were often entertained at one time.
Sounds like him. We need some color on those statues and columns.
For most, this was not the norm, not at all. For most, and when I say most, I mean the upper echelon of society, the patrician class, because actually most people couldn't ever dream of having a home big enough to even host a dinner. But for that upper echelon, well, most of them kept their parties pretty small. 9 invited diners was the ideal. But even...
Man, 9 is small? I go nuts when we invite 2 people over for dinner. I'm already like anxious because I have to like double everything because I'm not used to it.
With just 9 invited guests, a lot more people may end up showing up, but we'll get to that later. Now, when you are inviting people, you can use either formal invitations that you send via messenger, or you can keep it a lot more casual, even last minute. You will dine well, Julius Cerialis, at my house. If you have no better plans, come. You will be able to observe the 8th hour. We will bathe together. You know how near Stephanus's baths are to me. First you will be given lettuce, useful for relaxing the stomach, and shoots cut from their parent leeks. Lettuce and leeks, how enticing. Now you'll note that he suggested that they bathe together before dinner, and that was the custom. In the early afternoon, the patrician men of Rome would make their way to the baths where they could bathe and have massages before returning home for dinner. And
sounds like the Romans. It's kind of funny that you're really telling someone, hey, come for dinner, I'll give you lettuce.